All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Natalie Mickelson, and I am joined today by my colleagues Sarah Harmon and Caitlin Wood from MDE. And we are here today to talk about the Michigan School Meals Program and how it relates to CEP. This morning's call is the first of three, and this call is focusing on CEP district-wide. And that means all of your schools participate in CEP. We have calls later today for if you have a partial CEP district or if you're not yet participating. But welcome, thank you for coming. I started a little bit late. I was trying to tweak the chat so everyone could put comments in there and we can hopefully get some questions answered. Let's get started. Our agenda this morning is we're gonna run through the program requirements, who is eligible, and what are my next steps to opt into the Michigan School Meals Program. Again, our focus is for full CEP or CEP district-wide, but we're going to run through some basics for those of you that maybe are new to CEP this year or new just to the National School Lunch Program. We'll talk about identified student percentage and what that means for qualifying for CEP. We'll look at a screenshot of an application so you can tell, is my application ready? Is it submitted and complete and ready for this school year? We're going to talk about the education benefit form and then resources we have on our websites. We'll talk through claims, what do they look like, and how will reimbursement work with the Michigan School Meals Program? And then at the end, we'll do an application demo. Maybe your application is not complete and ready for this school year, or you need to make some edits. I'll walk you through how to do that. All right, so Michigan School Meals Program requirements. Program requirements they include, but are not limited to, participating in both the National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program. I've had a few people email saying they have a really low breakfast or low free and reduced eligibility and haven't had to participate in breakfast in the past. Do I need to now? Yes, you do. You need to participate in both breakfast and lunch. You need to adopt CEP to maximize federal reimbursement, which is why we're here today. You need to collect relevant family income information, which is for CEP schools, the education benefits form or a direct certification determination. And then write off all outstanding student meal negative balances. Trying to switch my screen so I can see things a little bit better. Caitlin and Sarah, if we're not recording, oh, I see the recording on. Okay, excellent. Sorry, guys, it's the first of many. I want to make sure we're doing things right. All right, CEP basics. CEP allows high poverty schools to participate or to provide free breakfast and lunch to all students. This program existed before the Michigan School Meals Program, but it'll run behind the scenes. Eligibility and reimbursement is based on the percentage of identified students, or ISP. Any school district can use this option if at least one of its schools has 40% or more students certified for free meals without an application. Those are our identified students for that ISP. You're no longer allowed to collect free and reduced price school meal applications from households in participating schools while you're participating in CEP. Instead, you're going to collect the education benefit form. And then you're going to pull the direct certification reports and update extended eligibility throughout the school year. All right, identified student percentage. The federal regulations for identified student percentage say that it's based on April 1st enrollment. Here in Michigan, we use the spring general collection for that because that certifies in April. And that's our baseline data. That data is going to automatically flow into your coordinated application. To calculate ISP, you're looking at your categorically eligible students for free meals, and then you're going to divide that by the total building enrollment. So who we're looking at for those identified students, it or they are students that are directly certified as eligible or directly certified as free. So students directly certified as SNAP, temporary assistance, or Medicaid free. If students are receiving benefits through extended eligibility, those students could be included as well. They're not going to be in that spring general collection baseline data. If you have students that are receiving the food distribution program on Indian reservations or FDPIR, that falls into the identified student percentage. And then students experiencing homelessness, migrant runaway, enrolled in Head Start, or if they're directly certified foster, these categories are also included in that identified student group. The benefits in the bottom bullet don't extend to other household members. So if a child's directly certified foster, that's an independent benefit. So students that fall into these categories divided by your building enrollment, that's how the building ISP is determined. Okay. My notes for the slides are not showing, but I can walk through this. So this is what the Michigan School Meals Amendment is going to look like in the coordinated application. It's not here yet. We hope that it's going to be pushed into the application in the next couple weeks. It's going to push into any status that you're in. So if you haven't yet initiated, it'll appear there once it's available. If you are working on it, maybe you're doing modifications back and forth with your analyst, it's going to appear there. If your application is already submitted, or sorry, already approved, you'll amend your application and they're going to be there. It's on the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program sponsor details page. So the same page where the CEP yes or no question is, these questions are going to appear as 7, 8, and 9. So question number 7 is where you say, yes, I want to opt into Michigan School Meals. Number 8 is where you indicate the amount of student negative balance and upload a point of sale report for that. 9 is where you indicate whether you've written off those balances and upload accounting transactions to support that. There's going to be information for 8 and 9 posted to the Michigan School Meals website detailing what those pieces look like. All right. So on the CEP site selection page, this group wants to opt into CEP, you plan to participate, but is your page ready? So looking at this example, if you look at the status up here, this is just a status display. You can't click on submitted and have anything change. But this application's in edit mode. It's not submitted and it's not approved. So in this screenshot, there would normally be, I think this person, this is where a submit button would be. I should have pulled a different screenshot, but it would be right here. Once you click that submit button, the status will switch this way. What you're looking for is submitted or approved. When I do the live demonstration, we'll cover where that submit button is on this side of the page. But again, go into your application. Are we in submitted or are we in approved? If not, do the steps on the page to correct it and get it to that point. All right, education benefits form. These forms are important once you are in CEP because while meals are free to students and we don't need a school meals application to determine that eligibility, the way that the state of Michigan awards education funding is through a free or reduced determination, whether it's through direct certification or this alternate income form. So we have 2 forms available. One is this one with the annual income ranges. So a household of 3 would check the 3 box and say, I'm at or below this amount, I'm between these 2 amounts, or I'm at or above this amount. They'd enter in all of the students they have in the district, they'd complete the certification, and these all line up with the annual income guidelines. So the first column aligns with free, reduced, and paid, and that's how you can approve it. The other form collects the household size and income, more like this model. So they would write in, I have 3 members in my household, and this is our annual income. You can choose whichever form you want. Some people have a preference based on how their local systems are set up. They might want to use the household size and income one, so they can enter in a number. But the choice is yours. You'll notice at the top, the name is Education Benefit Form this year. Some people have been saying, is this the same as the household information report? We've printed household information reports. Is that okay? It's okay. They're the same form. We had updated the name to better reflect what it's used for. But if you're using household information report, that's okay. Education benefits form is the new one. If you're just starting to print, use this version. The associated letters and the new letters on the school meals website, Michigan School Meals website, are going to say education benefits forms. So if you have something different, or maybe locally, if you named it something different, just make sure to update the names for consistent messaging. It is okay to make online versions of this form. There's a lot of people that say, we have an online system. Can we do that to include it in our enrollment packet, or, whatever you have going on? Yes, absolutely you can. You do want to make sure that you have the ability to have a secure transaction with people uploading that personal information and the ability to collect a signature. But online forms certainly help with flowing data through into your systems for state reporting. If you are new to CEP and you previously had a company that had an online application, I would check with them and see if they have a CEP version of this. Some of the companies out there do, and I think it's a pretty easy switch over. Additionally, if you just recently switched over to CEP and maybe you already had applications out there, it's the end of July right now, maybe you put your applications out July 1st. You don't need to collect a new form if you're changing over today from apps to education benefits forms. Those approved application determinations can be used for that family. We don't need to collect a new form from them. All right, where are the resources on our website? Sarah and Caitlin, you might need to type in the links for things. My question and answer and webinar chats are all kind of frozen, so I can't drop in links.
We will do that. And Natalie, we also have a few questions coming in that I think will be easier to answer live, but I want to wait till the end just because we have time for that at the end. And so there's some that just are easier to answer live to everyone. Some we're typing in answers as we go. So just so you know, we'll read some off to you when we're done with all the slides.
Thank you so much. That is all frozen to me right now, so I can't click into it. And I want to make sure the PowerPoint stays up. All right, so where are resources on the website? CEP forms and instructions are on the CEP forms and instructions page, link to be added. This includes a letter to households, the 2 versions of the education benefits form, a sharing information form, and then a list of all of our translations that are available. Sharing information form. This is optional. You don't have to use it. And on the letter to households, you can adjust that. It's a template letter. So some people have called and said, we have a pretty small school district. We don't have a pay to play, or we don't have all these things available in our district. You can edit that part of the letter so it works for what your district offers. It's a Word document, so you're typing in your your contact information, you're putting in your school letterhead, and you can adjust the bottom of that letter. Additionally, some people have said, we have these, really specific program names that are available. Can we add that in? Absolutely. But we're giving families the option to share that information as we did historically for our school meals app. That one's optional. For the translated forms, I believe there are 12 languages in addition to English. Again, that list is on the CEP forms and instructions page. We have translations for the letter to households, the annual income and household size, or household size and income. I said that backwards. education benefit form, and then the sharing information. Hopefully when we email you, we're going to also email the English version of that. We've tried to simplify it down so we don't need to update them annually. And if you need to edit out certain lines, like, oh, I need to delete the bottom 3, you can line up the English version to the translated version to see where that information is. I know a lot of you out there prefer to use the education benefit form that has the annual income ranges. We did not translate those. It was kind of a trade-off. And to be able to translate into more languages to reach more families, we couldn't do both versions of the form. We were trying to stick to what doesn't need to be updated annually. So if you email MDE School Nutrition with what forms you want and what translations, we'll get back to you with that. The direct certification page has a direct certification letter for CEP schools. We've had some feedback that that letter is confusing, explaining, you know, the one that goes home traditionally. If you were eligible for reduced meals, it tells you how to apply for free. That doesn't really work for CEP schools. So that's been edited, and you can pull that from the direct certification website. On the Michigan School Meals website, which is now live, I caution you, I went in, some of the links weren't quite correct. So hopefully this afternoon we have those all updated. So they link to the correct documents. It's more than the form flyer, that link was wrong. So
Natalie, I was gonna say, someone just asked if it opens into our SharePoint instead of a shared document. So it was asking for a sign in into Microsoft.
Oh.
And so I said we would work on that and make sure,
okay.
Because I think it was just, we saved it from our SharePoint instead of saving it from I don't know, something where everyone has access to. Yeah. So we will also work on that, and we'll work on that to get it updated as soon as we can today.
All right. So Caitlin, if we can get those notes to Sarah, Harmon, and Connie, they're
absolutely
the ones that I've been working on. Thank you. That's great feedback for those of you that have been in. So once the website is correct and all the links are going to their intended spots, and it's more than the form flyer. So kind of saying, why do we still need this education benefit form when meals are free? And then we have social media posts that you can kind of put out there periodically from now into the school year, reminding families to complete the form. And again, why we need it. The social media posts are editable. They're a template. You can use them however best fits your needs. All right, point of service. So Sarah, Harmon, if you're able to take over now.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Natalie. So just going over point of service, we know it's really important to always remember that we have all of our documentation to support reimbursable meals and our claims. So reimbursement for traditional claiming schools is still based on free, reduced, and paid student status, so that students need to be counted that way all the time with Michigan school meals. Schools that are not in CEP must count and claim meals based on their eligibility of the student receiving that meal. And students will always receive that meal at no charge, but must be correctly listed on the meal eligibility rosters or your electronic POS, according to their actual school meal eligibility status, whether that's free, reduced, or paid. And they have to be claimed correctly for federal and state reimbursement. Schools that opt into CEP may use CEP meal count sheets to count the total reimbursable meals served, although CEP count sheets are always allowed. For total meal counts, all schools must have proper controls in place to ensure that students are not being counted and claimed for more than one reimbursable breakfast or one reimbursable lunch per day. Remember, so one breakfast and one lunch per day for the Michigan School Meal Program. So we always encourage our schools to continue using electronic POS systems for CEP. And again, meals are for reimbursement is for complete meals when you're taking point of service. So that's one free breakfast, one free lunch. If you serve a la carte or second meals, that has to be paid for separately, as well as remember that meals served to teachers and staff must be charged according to the federal regulations, and they're not eligible for this reimbursement or for the Michigan School Meals Program. So on the next slide, we will discuss claims. Thank you, Natalie. So remember that we are always going to continue to file our claim in the Mine 2.0 or Mine Legacy system. The claim process is exactly the same as you did before. So if you are not CEP or CEP, you're going to claim in the free reduced paid. If you're CEP, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. So claiming in the correct categories and your claiming percentage. Mine is going to calculate that reimbursement for you, that federal reimbursement based on free or paid, and then that state reimbursement to make up the difference to that federal amount, whether you're severe need or not. And this was mentioned yesterday, but just as a friendly reminder, we're still working on the claims. So if you need a July claim that involves the Michigan School Meals, because that was enacted on July 20th, we're asking that you wait to submit those July claims until we get the go-ahead to do that, so that we don't have to do amendments and that everything's going to be paid properly. So if you have July claims for Michigan School Meals, we're asking that you hold off to submit those until you receive further communication and guidance from us. So on this slide, you can see that a claim in mind, what might it look like if you have CEP, right? So when you click on each individual site, you're going to have 3 different areas that you can complete. That first arrow on the left-hand side is, yep, thank you, Natalie, is showing the total servings per meal. So you're going to enter for the month. This is showing July, how many breakfasts you served for this month and how many lunches you served for this month in the total servings column. If you go to the next arrow, which is days served, you're going to enter the number of days served for your breakfast and for your lunch. They might be the same and they might be different depending on how you serve, if you had half days or not. And then you're going to enter that total enrollment as of the last day of service for that month in the right-hand column. Now, remember that your claiming percentage or your percentage of meals claimed as free is automatically calculated for you, and that's listed right there. So on this screen, we can see that it is 75.9% claimed as free, and then the rest is going to be claimed technically as paid, and we'll see that in the next slide. So here is a mock-up. It's not 100% finalized, which is why we don't want you to submit your July claim yet, of the monthly claim status report, which I always find very useful to show how many meals I claimed. Maybe I had to amend a claim if something happened, and what that reimbursement is and what category that is. So here you can see that if we want to start in the breakfast area, the paid, which we normally would see, is now going to be displayed as federal paid. So you know that that's the federal amount for a paid meal. So if we were looking at that previous percentage, that difference of, I think, 24.1% would be that paid rate from the federal. Here, if you had a reduced rate in your claim, it will be federal reduced. Same thing for free. Your free rate would be listed as federal free, as well as if it's severe need or not. The difference is that you can see here it says extra, like paid or extra reduced. Those are going to be displayed as Michigan paid, Michigan reduced, Michigan paid severe need. You would see that listed, and that's going to be the difference between the federal rate and your reimbursement rate. The state will kick in that difference. So if you had that paid rate of, I can't remember it off the top of my head, of like 50 cents, I think, or something like that, the difference here will be, I think, $3.85 for a lunch that you would notice being paid per lunch that you claim, or breakfast. So hopefully that makes sense. It will be done behind the scenes, but you can see it displayed on the claim status report.
All right.
Yep.
I was able to see some of the questions. So we'll go back up to eligibility. So we have a few questions about GSRP in preschool and what the age cutoff is. And it was determined that for the Michigan School Meals Program, the cutoff was going to be 4 years old, as that's the criteria for GSRP in Michigan. So 4-year-old preschool programs, whether they're GSRP or tuition-based, they may be claimed through the National School Lunch Program and in turn, Michigan School Meals. Those 3-year-old programs will need to be directed to the Child and Adult Care Food Program for this school year to claim those meals. Okay, I think the other ones I can kind of talk through with the application. Sarah, Caitlin, do we see Nexus now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm going to start from the search page because I'm demonstrating someone who already has an application submitted. I'm in a testing environment. I'm logged in as someone, so it looks a little bit odd, but hopefully we can kind of get the idea. A new addition into Nexus in the last couple of weeks was this recent documents piece, which is really nice. Those of you that work in multiple grants or applications, you might be able to just go to recent documents here to see your application. Once your application is submitted to MDE or approved, it's not going to appear in my tasks. So this kind of stumps people. Where do I find my application once I'm in that status? You might see it here in recent documents, but if you don't, if you go here to applications, we can search it. I find less is more with this page. If you try to, you can select the application from the drop down here, coordinated application. I don't recommend using status, and you really don't need this other information. Let's keep it simple, and then you can search. So we're going to select the application. Sponsor details, the Michigan School Meals question is not here. So someone are saying, I'm CEP already in all of my district. Do I need to do anything? We'll talk about that 100% free claiming piece in a moment to see how you can tell in your application. Number 3 is where you would say yes to elect CEP. If you haven't done that already, maybe you're someone Caitlin or I spoke to in the last week or so and said, yes, you are eligible to district-wide. You're going to opt into CEP. This is where you would do that. The additional questions are going to appear on this panel. They're not available yet in the testing environment. All right, so now on the CEP page. Currently, this site has 1 building participating, but they're eligible for district-wide. So we're gonna make it so all of the sites are in. This site right here, oh, I don't have my little highlighter thing anymore. This site right here is at 100% eligibility. All of the meals for this site are reimbursed at the free rate. So if your eligibility column shows 100%, or if you look in your claim, maybe you participated last year in your mid-cycle, you could look there. But right here, if this is 100% in all of your buildings, you don't need to do the Michigan School Meals Program because you're already receiving that reimbursement. You wouldn't need to do that opt-in on the sponsor details page, and you're all set. You want to make sure, though, that your application is either submitted or approved, and all of your sites are participating. All right, so I'm going to edit this page to add in these other buildings. Once I edit, it moves the status back into this mode. I'm going to click all of these sites into edit mode because I can't put them in the same group unless they're all being edited. We'll kind of work from left to right here. We have participating checkboxes for all of them. That's great. That's what we wanted. I'm going to put all of these sites into group A. This district has a lower eligibility. They're going to be closer to that 40% threshold. But all of the sites grouped together does get them above the 40%. So we can see all sites are participating. They're all in group A. And the eligibility is 71.6%. We're not at that magic 100% where all of the meals are reimbursed at the free rate. through federal reimbursement. So the Michigan School Meals Program would be a good option for this because Michigan is going to make up the difference for those paid meals. Something else that people get stuck on. I want to show you this in case you're kind of stuck in this mode. Oops. Let's say you were just wanting to add in one site. Maybe everyone was already a group A and you're just adding in the high school. If you try to click this into group A and then save it, it's not going to work. It's just going to keep going blank. To add a site into a group, that group that you want to go in needs to be in edit mode. So I'm going to edit those sites. It unlocks the whole group, and then we can put it back in. Some of your sites might have zeros there. You would see zeros if it's an early childhood building or if it's a non-public school. There needs to be a manual edit behind the scenes where I would add in those numbers. But if you see those zeros, maybe for Pioneer High, go through and just kind of click edit and save back and forth. Doing that toggle generally will load in the data. Depending on when you were playing with your site, it might have displayed as zeros at first, but if you kind of rock it back and forth, they'll load there. All right, I don't want to stop because this is in edit mode. It's not submitted. MDE can't review it or approve it while it's in this status. But again, all sites are participating. They're in a group A, and I see this 23 to 27 cycle. So now I'm going to click submit. We are able to run reports, see who is submitted, so I can follow up and approve them. I'm also able to see who's in edit mode and might need some help with getting to that next step. But if you're unsure about grouping, eligibility, I'm just kind of stuck in general on this page, you can email Caitlin or I, and we can kind of walk you through those next steps for how to complete it. Caitlin doesn't currently have access as she's newly flipped back into the MDE role. So I'm the one who would have access now. Hopefully Caitlin's going to be up and running in the next couple weeks.
Natalie?
Right. Yes.
Real quick, while you're talking about eligibility and we're kind of looking at this page, one of the questions that came in, and I'm typing an answer, but I thought this would be a good live one, is how to raise your ISP. If education benefit forms play a role in that, if you know, a student qualifies as free based on income, but not directly certified. So could you just go over really quick, like the direct cert and what that means? And then there are ways to help increase that identified student percentage and kind of how that works just a little bit.
I can. So kind of depending on where you're at, I handle this differently. There's some districts that really just need 1 or 2 students to bump you into being eligible. So maybe you would put in a couple students here and reported extended eligibility. If you were to enter anyone in this column, you need to upload supporting documents. And what I'd be looking for with that is the name and the UIC for the student that's on the direct certification list and their school building. And then the name, UIC, and school building for who is receiving the extended benefit. So maybe there is an elementary, or maybe there's a middle school student that has a sibling in the primary building. You could put a 1 here saying, I have an extended eligibility for the primary building. But I would need that documentation loaded into GEMS Mars. I'll click on this link to show you what happens. The CEP GEMS Mars upload is not like admin review GEMS. You don't need to do a fancy login. You don't need to be a certain level. Anyone can enter information here. And then once you say, I have other documentation, you can put the file here. So it might be an Excel file that has the name, UIC, and school for the students directly certified, the name, UIC, and school for the child who's receiving the benefit. Sometimes for districts that are right on the edge, I might work with you to upload, where you upload your full district enrollment with information. The big piece that helps me is when you process applications and you assign an application number to a household. So I can see, you know, maybe Caitlin Wood and Natalie Mickelson are siblings. They have the same address. And Natalie's directly certified. That benefit extends to Caitlin. I can see that they were on application 606 together. And I go through your full enrollment. I match it to the direct certification list. And I look at those application numbers from your local system and extend benefits there. Sometimes that is a good option for people that are right on the cusp. There's a few people that have emailed and they're like, oh, all of our buildings, we're at 38% or we're at 39%. I can go through that process with you to see if we can get you CEP district-wide. Sometimes we might go through that process if you have an early childhood building. Some data is in the Michigan student data system that I'm able to get there, but not all preschool programs require you to upload that enrollment. So it's not always a complete set when I look at that download. All right, non-public schools. I've seen a couple questions about that. So where you have an alternate agreement with a non-public school, they're not going to receive that additional reimbursement. There's some of you that have a long-standing history with that non-public alternate agreement school. We're not looking for you to remove them at this point. So if your district sites will be reimbursed with that additional state reimbursement, there's going to be pushed into the site listing page a column that says Michigan school meals. I think it's right after this new site. So you'll see yes for your public school sites and a no for that non-public school. So they will be CEP. They'll continue to run through that process, but they won't receive the additional reimbursement. Or they'll continue to be free reduced paid at their normal free reduced paid rates and not receive that additional reimbursement. But they can still participate in the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program. They just won't receive that additional funding. There's good information about the closed captioning. I think I could have kind of filtered that there. Thank you for that comment. And we will make sure we do better with the demonstrations and future webinars with that.
I also said that if anyone has specific application questions, we can answer those individually. And so hopefully that will help as well. If anyone was having trouble with the audio and the closed captioning.
All right, we had a question about GSRP students when they're managed by the ISD. Yes, this does get tricky where they're enrolled in your district, they're fed in your cafeteria, but they're an ISD or RESA program. Yes, they can be added in. I think it's easier for us to have a side conversation kind of about how that's going on. But that's where if you're able to upload an enrollment list, I have a list of criteria that I need to do the matching that yes, can be factored into your building. Sometimes it's a mixed bag if it's going to increase it or decrease it, but yes, we can add them in. All right, what is the purpose of the CEP eligibility rate, or what is it used for? So back to the claims. Well, maybe I'll start with the application here. So on the CEP page, you can have one grouping or you can have multiple groupings, but this is the CEP eligibility, which sets the free rate for reimbursement. So 71.6% of the meals are going to be reimbursed the free rate federally. The difference of that is going to be reimbursed at the paid rate. So when we look back at the claims, that feeds into your claim. And however many breakfasts are served are multiplied by that CEP rate. how many lunches are served are multiplied by that. And that separates out your free versus paid federal reimbursement. And then the state reimbursement is going to bring that paid amount up to the free rate. So how do we claim 3-year-olds with CACFP versus CEP if they're blended? This might be a conversation more to like kind of dig into what you have going on. Sometimes they might be separate classrooms. If they're not separate classrooms, we might need to walk through that. But the line is for the Michigan School Meals Program, age 4. I know that's different than some of the guidance that we've had in the past. But that's how it's working for this school year. So it's kind of hard to give a blanket statement without finding a little bit more about what your specific classrooms and setups are like, because there's such a spectrum for CACFP. If you're already participating in CACFP, the program analyst for that program might be able to best help you. If you're not yet participating in there, you can reach out to your National School Lunch Program analyst, and we can kind of walk through some options with that piece. Again, this is not all live and correct, but this is the Michigan School Meals website. There's a section for families and a section for schools. And if we click into the for schools, this is where we have the resources for CEP schools and districts. So we have a flyer explaining why the education benefit form is necessary. We have social media posts. This links back to the CEP website. I know some of you have a hard time finding that. So this links you to the website. Same with the direct certification letters, it brings you there. Oh, we had some questions about direct certification letters. So yes, you do still need to send direct certification letters even when you're in CEP. Direct certification is a federal process. You still need to continue to follow those processes and policies, even though you're operating that. So again, that letter has been modified to kind of work better for CEP, but you do need to notify families that they're eligible for those benefits, as those benefits may qualify them for other school or social programs. People are kind of used to that letter and receiving that benefit. If we have students experiencing homelessness prior to CEP, we created an application for them. Should we utilize the education benefit form? So for that, you should be working with your local McKinney-Vento liaison or have a homeless liaison where they're going through and properly documenting the information for that student. They qualify for benefits far beyond just school meals. So we want to make sure that that liaison is documenting that student, has the paperwork there for it. You wouldn't need a separate education benefit form for them. You can kind of do the same documentation process that you had in the past for those McKinney-Vento students.
And Natalie, I think a lot of times people, when they're not CEP and using a school meals application, will just create an application for that homeless student to keep on file so that every student has something sort of in their file. But with homeless, along with some of these other categorically eligible, you don't need to do that. You just need to make sure you have your list that's verified by your homeless liaison or McKinney-Vento contact in your school, who could be a guidance counselor, principal, anyone could be that position. And you just need to have that list on file. So that's what she was saying. You don't need something individual for each student, even though that sometimes was everyone's process when you had applications. So just know that list is enough to say that they are categorically eligible for free meals in your district. And that hopefully simplifies it a little bit.
Okay. So on the direct certification page, we have a direct certification approval for CEP schools. So you're able to use that one there. And then on the Michigan School Meals page, there's a direct certification there's a letter there as well for free or reduced that you could use. So this Michigan School Meals page kind of links out to all the related resources. Again, we're still editing and tweaking it, but I do want to promote it as we talked about it yesterday during the town hall and it wasn't live. So I want people to see where it's at. Do we have a CEP application every year? Kind of. It's a good question. I didn't talk about that. So the CEP application is in your coordinated application, which does need to be completed annually. But CEP is a 4-year cycle. So you'll notice here on the application, we're good for 23 through 27. So what this means is you could stay in CEP at this rate, the 71.6, up through June 30th of 2027. I recommend though, that if you're not at that magic 100% number, that you look every year to see, are we a little bit higher? Because even if you only move up to 72%, your reimbursement's a little bit higher and you've started a new 4-year cycle securing CEP for your school district. Those of you that are already at 100%, some of you have a really strong 100%. You don't necessarily need to apply every year, but I don't recommend that people go all the way to the end of the cycle. Sometimes your district makeup changes. There's some people that are on year 4 of their cycle now, and they're like, our numbers are decreasing. You know, we're reapplying at a lower rate, but I'm worried that it's going to be a little bit lower next year. So we want to secure it right now when we can. So this is within the annual coordinated application, but CEP is on its own 4-year cycle within there. Any year when you look though, you just want to make sure, am I submitted? Am I approved? This application is in edit right now, so it's not done. Our education benefits forms mandatory to collect. These are not regulated in the same way that a school meals application is. You are not allowed to require a school meals application. Some people include the education benefits form in an enrollment packet. I wouldn't say that they're mandatory. Not everyone is eligible for meals. Who you want to focus on are families that traditionally qualified on income with a school meals application. That's kind of your target group here. Families that are directly certified, you don't need this from. So that's kind of your target group for the education benefits forms. As far as writing off inactive student meals or both active and inactive, the fiscal team is putting together some resources that detail all of that information. So keep an eye out for where that is linked to. It might be on their FAST website now, but we're going to be communicating for how to do that piece. Did the Michigan Department of Education communicate with districts about the change? I think we really just did it through our child nutrition bulletins or some webinars that Caitlin and I did earlier in the year. I don't think that there was something, you know, specifically out from well, we are the Department of Education. Things did come out with it. But again, if your documents are already out labeled household information report, that's okay. They're essentially the same thing. Some people had just suggested a different name change to hopefully uptick the information that's coming back.
And when Natalie and I were working on these also, we, as our whole office, are trying to figure out ways to make this more of a district-wide collection process as opposed to just food service, because usually it fell to food service even though meals are all free. And now with the state or with the Michigan school meals, the same thing. We want to try to make sure that the district in general is responsible for collecting all of the student eligibility information, because all meals are free and they're no longer connected to that. So we're hoping that some of the name changes would help with that. But again, the name of the form doesn't necessarily matter as much as trying to collect as many as you can.
And I believe everything went out in the Thursday communication to superintendents and principals, and we have been partnering with other MDE offices to make sure that they can help push this information out. And I believe Dr. Rice will be working on it as well.
All right, so we had a question, someone who's mid-cycle CEP. You're in the middle of your cycle, you know, but we're not at 100%. Can we still check our numbers? You absolutely can. This application is in approved status. So it's something I didn't mention earlier. The CEP page has its own separate approval. Just the timeline of needing to get your application in for summer and the availability of CEP data don't entirely jive. So this allows for you to submit the application while we're still working on CEP. So you can go in now. Again, I'm in the testing environment, but this application is approved and I'm editing, I'm submitting, I'm doing that stuff. So you can absolutely go in and take a look and see if your numbers are better now. Oh, go ahead, Caitlin.
No, I was just going to read a couple of questions to you, but it sounds like you have them up.
I do have them up.
Okay, perfect.
My screen unfroze. Thank you for the comment about a letter that didn't open as expected. As I said, we have people still editing and revising it. It is not in its final state right now. We realize that some of the links are not correct. So we'll make note of that one that isn't correct and make sure we're updating that. Do we need to do verification if we're CEP this year? That's a great question. Verification is a review or confirmation of eligibility for school meals applications. So in CEP, we don't have school meals applications. So you have nothing to verify and you don't need to do verification. The verification collection report will still be in mind. You can still go look at it, but I do a batch certification for districts that are CEP district-wide. The one thing to pay attention to is those of you that have an alternate agreement with a non-public school. Your district buildings might be CEP, but that one isn't. You would still need to verify that school if that building is traditional claim. Does direct cert reduced feed into our identified student percentage? No, it does not. It's surprising to us. Michigan, we've had direct certification with Medicaid free and reduced for several years now. That's still a demonstration project and not all states have it yet. So direct certification reduced is not currently included in part of that CEP eligibility calculation. So the numbers that you see there are just directly certified free. It's not directly certified reduced. Good question.
Natalie, could you answer the question about the education benefit form being mandatory to collect, meaning parents need to complete the form regardless of their income? Could you go through and just explain the one end of directly certified doesn't need to, and kind of how the form?
Yeah, I thought I covered that one. I thought I'd address that one, but I can cover it again.
Yeah.
So if families that are directly certified do not need to complete an education benefit form. That's why it's so important to stay on top of your direct certification runs and extending eligibility. That saves both you and families time in needing to do that. The education benefit form isn't regulated in the same way that a school meals application is. We have a whole handbook for the school meals app. There is not one for the education benefit form. So you can include that in ways that maybe you were not able to include the school meals app. Some people include it in their enrollment packet. So you do have a few more options there. What letters do we send to families that are not CEP? Okay, I didn't talk about this because it was the full CEP webinar, but if you are partial CEP, this packet here, again, I'm not sure that all of these links are correct. This just went live shortly before this, and I haven't had time to vet all of these. I know that some of them are incorrect. But these letters here are modified for the Michigan School Meals Program, removing some of this form qualifies you for meals. It does tell them they're eligible for other pieces, but it kind of removes some of that free and reduced language. That was the intent there. So you can use these letters. If you have a non-public school alternate agreement, they need to continue to use the regular school meals application because they're not under that Michigan School Meals Program. So for children or students that are in CACFP, you can use this form. And you don't need to require those GSRP students to fill out both a school meals app and an education benefits form. They can just do this one more restrictive form. So if a CACFP family were to complete just the education benefits form, that doesn't meet all the federal criteria for a school meals application. It doesn't have social security number. It doesn't have household income broken out by the members. So some of the things that, you know, are more restrictive and are more detailed on a school meals app, we intentionally removed those from the CEP forms. So if you're partial CEP, or if you have CACFP programs in your district, those families would just need to do this more restrictive form, and it would qualify, or it makes the same determination as that education benefit form would. I think it could save you time if you refresh the direct certification list and extend those benefits. It might save you one form to look at as you're going through the stack. After school snack program. So after school snack is not included in the Michigan School Meals Program. Michigan School Meals is just breakfast and lunch. So for snack, it really depends on your eligibility. If you are area eligible where your building meets that 50% threshold, or for CEP schools, I think it's 31.25 is the site eligibility. Mm-hmm. That's 31.25 times 1.6 gets you to 50%. If those buildings are eligible for that, you fall into that free claiming. Otherwise, they would be by free reduced paid. I think we would need to talk about, because we don't have applications, we will add the after school snack clarification to our Q&A, because that does need to be fleshed out a little bit. Thank you for that question.
And actually, Natalie, I looked at the guidance this morning for a different question, but it says if you are non-area eligible, so if you're area eligible where you meet that 50%, so the 31.25, for the building, it's individual building, you can't use your district-wide ISP, it's every building is on their own, then you're free for everyone, snack is free for everyone. For CEP buildings, if you're not area eligible, so it's less than that, then you use your free and paid claiming percentages for that building. And to claim the snack for that building, it's based on the free and paid percentages. And so if you have other questions when you're trying to claim that, we can help answer those, but that's basically how it works.
Okay. So for CEP, you'd be looking at the identified student percentage for the site. So not the grouped one, the site. These are all above 31.25. So these are all area eligible. Okay. If our GSRP So no, if you do CACFP snack, the Child and Adult Care Food Program is a totally separate program from National School Lunch and School Breakfast. CEP is under National School Lunch and School Breakfast. So unfortunately, eligibility with CACFP doesn't yet talk to CEP eligibility. So you need to collect apps for that CACFP daytime snack. Those need to be claimed by free reduced paid status. An education benefit form doesn't meet that criteria. All right. Thank you everyone for the participation and the questions and taking time out of your day today, taking time out of your day yesterday. I know this is a lot of information. Hopefully this additional presentation kind of helped clear things up. I know yesterday was fast and furious. Here are our emails. My name was Natalie. I'm able to help you with CEP eligibility. If we're right on the edge, what forms do we do? Caitlin is as well. Sarah Harmon is kind of our point person for claims and navigating some of this. So you can reach out to her if you have some of those questions. Please stay tuned to communication from MDE. That's through those child nutrition bulletins. That's how we're going to share when the Michigan school meals option pushes into the application. What resources do you need to upload to, satisfy those number 8 and number 9 pieces? So thank you again for everything you do, taking your time, and we're going to sign off for today.